Adekola Adebayo Adelabu, a nominee from a nominee from Oyo State. We would like you to give us a summary, just synopsis of your resume, and thereafter you can answer some questions from the distinguished senators.
I revered the distinguished Senate President, the Deputy Senate President, all the principal officers of the Nigerian Senate, and all the distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I say good afternoon to you all. With the permission of the Senate President, I also want to do a special recognition of my brother senators from my home state, Oyo State, beginning with our brother, the ranking senator, Abdul Fattah Buhari, representing the good people of Oyo North, from Ogbomoso, my brother senator from my senatorial constituency, Senator Sharafaddin Ali from Ibadan, and Senator Akintunde Yunus from Oyo Central. Sharafaddin Ali is from Oyo South. Senator Akintunde Yusuf is from Oyo, representing the group of Oyo Central. I am happy to be back once again, having been screened and cleared here precisely 9 years ago in March 2014, when I was nominated as the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria by the then President Goodluck Jonathan. I'm happy to be here. My name is Abdulwahid Adebayo Adekola Adelabu. I'm a native of Ibadan, precisely from Ibadan Southeast local government of Oyo State. For the record, I'm a direct grandson of the late pre-independence flamboyant political chieftain of NCNC, who was also a federal minister during his time and the opposition leader of the Western Region House of Assembly. He was popularly known as Adelabu Bekelemesi. I'm 52 years old, born in 1970, precisely 28 September 1970. And like our revered Senate President mentioned yesterday, that Nigerians deserve to know who their will-be ministers are. I'm happily married to a wife with 4 children. My educational background. I attended my primary school in Ibadan City Council Primary School, later changed to Ibadan Municipal Government Primary School between 1976 and 1982. I proceeded to Lagelu Grammar School, where I had my secondary school between 1982 and 1987, achieving my West African School certificate with 6 distinctions and 2 credits. From there, I proceeded to Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, between 1988 and 1992 to read accounting. I left the school in flying colors with a first-class degree in management and accounting. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a banker, having qualified in 1996 as a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, and a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CBN. I'm a member of the United States Institute of Internal Auditors. I'm also an associate member of the Institute of Directors of Nigeria and the UK. And just last year, I was also conferred with the national honor of Officer of the Order of the Federal Republic, OFR, by our immediate past president, President Muhammadu Buhari. In the course of my career, I had training exposure, both locally and overseas, in most of the prestigious business schools across the world, including Harvard Business School in Boston, USA, Wharton Business School in Pennsylvania, USA, University of Columbia in New York, Stanford University in California, USA, and Kellogg's Business School, Evanston, Chicago, USA. I started my working career as a youth corper in 1993 with Nigeria Agricultural and Cooperative Bank. In 1992 to 93 as a youth corper in Warri, Delta State, where I did my service here. I completed my service here in 1993 to join an international firm of chartered accountants and management consultants called Price Waterhouse. It was the biggest accounting firm throughout the world at the time, under the leadership of Mr. Nsa Harrison, that we all know as the great accountant before he left us. I trained as an accountant, management consultant, between the year 1993 and year 2000, rising to the post of audit manager and senior consultant before moving over to the banking industry. At this time, I've actually achieved all the qualifications, professional qualifications that an accountant needed to face the industry. I chose to move over to the banking industry, which was actually a landmark change in my career. I started with a small bank called First Atlantic Bank as a financial controller under the MD-ship of Mr. Femi Pedro. And I can confirm to this other chamber that I also have one of my colleagues that we serve under Mr. Femi Pedro here. I was the financial controller of the bank as a senior manager. Now, looking for experience in a bigger bank, in fact, the biggest bank in Nigeria at that time, in terms of turnover and profitability, I moved over to First Bank in 2003 as a senior manager and deputy financial controller. A year after, I was promoted to principal manager and pioneer head of budget and performance management. This same colleague of mine, we served together in First Bank again, is also in this chamber, can testify to that. So having left First Bank and looking for international banking exposure, I joined Standard Chartered Bank as a general manager. In fact, as the regional manager for finance and strategy for consumer banking, covering the entire of West Africa, 6 countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Gambia, Côte d'Ivoire, and Togo. So I had my offices in both Lagos and Accra. I did this for about 3 years as a general manager. But I was reinvited by First Bank to join their newly formed executive management team as the chief financial officer of the bank and an executive vice president, which I obliged in December 2009, went back to First Bank. Just a year after, I was elevated to a member of the board as an executive director and the group chief financial officer of First Bank, a role I performed up to 2014, February 20 specifically, when the then President Goodluck Jonathan, found me worthy to be appointed as a deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to replace the then Mr. Tunde Lemon, who just retired from service. I was screened and confirmed by this Allo Chamber, by the Banking and Finance Committee, under the chairmanship of Mr. Basiotu, who is currently the governor of Cross River State. So I'm happy to be here. While I was in Central Bank of Nigeria, I joined as deputy governor in charge of financial system stability. And my major responsibility was to supervise all Nigerian banks and non-bank financial institutions in terms of operational oversight and regulatory policies. A year after, in 2015, I was moved over as Deputy Governor to oversee corporate services of Central Bank. In Central Bank, corporate services is responsible for all the support functions in Central Bank, including finance, human resources, legal, procurement, communication, security, and so on and so forth. I did this for about a year before I was moved to Deputy Governor Operations, which I did for about 2 years before I voluntarily resigned to contest the governorship election in my state, Oyo State. When I was at Central Bank, to round up, I was privileged to serve the country as the board chairman of National Institution Training Center, FITC, as the board chairman of the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, NIBS, as a board member of the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, as a board member of the Nigerian Security Printing and Meeting Company, NSPMC, as a board member of the Federal Inland Revenue Services, FRS, and a board member.
The nominee, I have 36 PhDs around the world. If I should appear before the Senate to read even my honorary degrees, they will not be able to close in a day. So all the boards you have served, we have taken judicial notice of all. Now let me invite somebody from Oyo State to find out when last you visited home. Because you could do all these things you are doing, and yet you are totally disconnected from home. Yes, the distinguished senators from Oyo State, Abdul Fattah Buhari.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, my name is Buhari Abdul Fattah. Mr. President, I will start from where you raise an observation. Myself and my two other colleagues, yesterday we met on our nominee, and we all agree that is a known person to us. We know him very well. That you are saying that when last did he visit Oyo State? He resides in Oyo State, he resides in Ibadan. So the visiting aspect does not even come out of it at all, because that's where he stays. Mr. President, myself and my colleagues yesterday, when we were discussing him, we were so happy. And we know he's a very brilliant chap. And like the logo of my state, we are a pace setter. We are not asking him to take a bow. We want the Senate to see the product of the first class we have. Ask him question, and we'll answer you very well. Because we are proud of the product we have. Mr. President, in 2018, during the 8th Senate, he came to me one day. After he was the deputy governor of CBN, and then I said, Egbon, I will resign. I said, I was dreaming. You resign what? He said, I want to resign from there. Why are you resigning? He said, I want to go and contest for governorship. That day I said, why? He said, look, the question is that I want to serve the people. I have the instinct that I want to serve. I agree with him that day, because for somebody to say he's leaving an exalted position of Deputy Governor of Central Bank, number 2 in command at that time, that I want to serve, you can see the sincerity that he really wants to serve. So at that time, with him, day in, day out, I was always in the cranny and corner of all our state during the campaign. Unfortunately, we didn't win at that time. But since that time, he maintained constant relationship with the grassroots. So for the president, taking him, because our product is a first-class product, is a good person that can serve in any ministry. When I say any ministry, when you go through his CV, Mr. President, it speaks volume. And can you even see, Mr. President, you have to come in at the right time that look, if me as the Senate President start reading my CV today, maybe we will not live here. He's so proud of what he has. Mr. President, my two other colleagues can confirm and say something about Adelabu is a first-class product. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's okay. No, you're okay. Abdul Fattah, you're okay. You see, if you are challenging the Senate to ask him questions, by the time the Senate is through with the questions, I hope you will see me smiling. Because why I'm mentioning this is, our dear nominee, you just mentioned that you were in Central Bank. In your opinion, was the Central Bank in competition with the federal government in its operations? Note what I've just said. Because in the minds of some people, they believe that the Central Bank is running a government within a government. Note it. That's number one. And the second one is, will you be very proud of how the Central Bank, prior to the emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ran the economy of Nigeria? That's number two. Number three, will you think that the policy of changing currency in 2 weeks to election? No, I'm not asking question. I'm not asking question. No, the nominee is very brilliant. It is Abdul Fattah that started it. He said, so let me not ask any question. Let me allow the floor, because Abdul Fattah, you are challenging the Senate. Watch out. I start with the distinguished Senate Whip. Start, because I know you.
Well, distinguished colleagues and SP, first of all, I want to actually congratulate the nominee. And Mr. Senate President, I stand here to always guide the Senate. This gentleman was before us, and we screened him to be the deputy governor of a central bank. The Senate has not changed. The content may have changed, but the rule of the Senate is still the same. We have screened him before, and he left to contest. But my question, because Buhari asked for it, I want to find out whether you are part of the Anchor Borrowers Scheme. If you are, then would you say that the Anchor Borrowers Scheme has achieved what it's supposed to? Then, if you are not, and the Anchor Borrowers Scheme was introduced with good intent, what would you think would be better way, especially now that we need to grow what we eat? And this is one of the major problems. That's the second question. The third one, because he said you should ask questions. The singular exchange rate triggered by this administration is with good intention, but the backlash of it is now being felt, and dollar is going up. And once it continues going, the price of products, which 95% of our consumption is imported, will continue to grow up. And the income that is going to our people is not the same. That's number three. Number four. Do I stop there? One more. Oh, okay. You said something in Hausa. Mr. President, I beg to sit down.
Mike, well, the distinguished colleagues, with all sense of seriousness, I think we have a first-class bread before us. But what the distinguished chief whip of the Senate was trying to say was that it should compare the multiple exchange rates that probably operated in their time with a single exchange rate currently in place. and advise on which one is the best. Before you answer that, let me get former Accountant General of the Federation, former Governor of Gombe State, and now distinguished Senator Dan Kwambo. You know a lot about the monetary industry. Please also ask him.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Ibrahim Dan Kwambo. I represent Gombe North. Let me start by congratulating our brother and my colleague. I say my colleague because I was in Coopers and Library, one of the famous accounting firms in the world, the #1 actually. And we built foundation of professionalism in that industry. My question, my brother, today the federal government is running 2 budgets, one for 2022 to December 2023, one 2023 to December 2023. By our Constitution, this is a violation of the Constitution, because the Constitution requires the Auditor General to submit an account within 3 months after preparation of an account by the Accountant General in 3 months, that is 6 months. Today, the accounts of the Federation have not been submitted to the Parliament. What will you do if you are made maybe the Minister of Finance or somebody that will be in charge of this kind of thing? Will you stop the 2022 accounts from running immediately, or what will you do otherwise? Two.
Yeah.
Order 52-4. With your permission, Mr. President, may I read? But Ojibrin cannot. It's 52-4. A senator must confine his observations to the subjects under discussion and may not introduce matter irrelevant thereto. Mr. President, what we are discussing here, I'm coming. Can I explain? We are screening a nominee here, but my distinguished colleague brought a matter that is irrelevant and not true. Excuse me. Order, please. Order, please. Order. I will need to explain, please. He is misguiding the Senate. We are not operating two budgets in this country. We are not operating 2 budgets in this country. What happened really was that at the end of 2022, the capital budget was not fully implemented. Why do I say so? Because certain items of expenditures that were started could not finish. And so here in this Senate, we requested that the executive government should be given the opportunity to conclude those projects. That's what happened. And so we passed a motion here. We passed a resolution. So, excuse me. Order, please. Then a resolution was brought by the Senate. A resolution which Senator Alero will attest to, that we should be able to finish our roads and so on and so forth, because money was provided, but there was a problem because of rainy season. We could not finish. And so that what happened. It was done in the interest of the people of this country and by the support of the Senate. So I think we should guide the Senate. I mean, we should order. We took the decision ourselves. Order, please, order. We took, can I explain, please? We took the, order, please. We took the decision here for the interest of the people of this country. And it was our resolution here. So to now say two projects are being operated, I think it's not correct. I think there's a need to guide the Senate and to guide everyone to understand the situation. I say submit. And only capital.
Distinguished Deputy Senate President, well, your explanation is to the effect that distinguished Senator Dan Kwambo was about to mislead Nigerians and that we are running two budgets, when in reality he was also questioning these hallowed chambers for passing a resolution that some of the capital budgets that were not finished in 2022, but which monies were provided, should be allowed to continue. And that does not amount to running two budgets. So it is important for the press to know that the distinguished Senator Dan Kwambo, from a political perspective, was trying to mislead the Senate. So your point of order is hereby sustained. Can I listen to distinguished Senator Tambua, please, in case you want to ask a question.
Have we finished? Well, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I believe that Mr. President, sitting as chair, would not want me to go back to the issue raised by distinguished Senator Dan Kwambo as a former speaker of a co-chamber of this National Assembly. Because if you want me to do that, Mr. Senate President, my response to you will be that a wrong is a wrong. Wait, a wrong is a wrong. When you want to roll over a budget, you roll it over. Okay, you want me to address?
Well, I thought you were distinguished Senator Tambua. I thought you raised your hand to ask question, but I noticed that you are not the one who raised your hand to ask question. It's actually Senator Wadada. Senator Wadada. So I think my eye caught the wrong dress.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, I remain honorable. Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu, representing Nasarawa West Senatorial District of Nasarawa State. I still remain a horse rider. Mr. Nominee, congratulations for your achievements. Your resume really speaks for you. My question, I have two questions for you. One has got to do with your family background. You are a grandson of a great politician who was positively on the opposition side. As Deputy Governor in Central Bank of Nigeria, you were there when the bank overlapped its bounds, went beyond monetary policy, jurisdiction of it, to fiscal policy and intervening in virtually everything, took over the constitutional responsibilities of agencies that were created by act of parliament. You were there, and coming from the family you came from, we would have expected you to have done something. Now that you are a nominee on your way to becoming minister, and by your resume, you are very likely to be a minister of one of the economic ministries. If you find yourself in the same situation you did in CBN, and with due respect, I wouldn't want to say compromised, but kept mute where you needed to talk. I mean, that is it. Secondly, though it did not happen while you were at the bank, but it happened, I mean, you got into the bank with the policy in place. Today, it is a policy of the central bank that every chief executive of commercial bank should exit after 10 years. This policy had nothing, at the point of inception, had nothing to do with the shareholders of banks. Don't you think that such a policy should be reviewed? Because where a chief executive is performing, effectively driving the bank to profitability and profitability after profitability, and then after 10 years, he or she growing the assets of the bank, and after 10 years, he or she is asked to exit, even if the shareholders of the bank are comfortable with him. You agree with me? There are bankers around the world, like David Zalman of Prosperity Bankshare, who had spent 21 years as chief executive because the shareholders of the bank were comfortable with him, and he was adding the needed and required value. What would you do differently as far as that policy is concerned when and if you find yourself in an office that is relevant to this? This is my submission, my 2 questions to you, but congratulations for your achievement so far.
Senator Wadada, if I heard the nominee very well, he pointed out that he met with his senators, Senator Abdul Fattah. You confirmed that many years ago, and then he now hinted you that he felt he should go into service to humanity. He would like to serve his people, and because of that he resigned as Deputy Governor of Central Bank. So some of the questions we are asking, that action had actually answered some of those questions. The distinguished Senator Solomon Adiola Ademiloku Yayi Olamileko, because you are the chairman of our preparation. No, have we changed it? We all are the chairman of our preparation, and you are seeing somebody in the industry. Just ask the last question so that he can take off from there. He is going to answer the questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Adeola Solomon Olamileko, representing the good people of Ogun West Senatorial District. Mr. President, thank you for this opportunity to speak to a friend. Mr. Adelabu Adebayo Adekola is a friend of long standing, a first-class graduate of developmental economics from Obafemi Awolowo University. Mr. President, his resume speaks volume, and I strongly believe that he has something to offer this country. Mr. President, my own question is this, and I strongly believe that if it's not finance minister, I will be heading towards national planning and budgets, either of the two. But sir, Mr. Adebayo has been involved in government at the highest level of banking activities. And you will agree with me that one of our major challenges during the last administration is the conflict between the fiscal and the monetary policy, which generated a lot of controversies even during the consideration of the medium-term expenditure framework. We continue to ask this question. And having served as the Deputy Governor of Central Bank, I want to know his take as far as the current challenges we have between these two major policies. Because no matter economic reform we might be putting in place, if there is conflict between these two policies, it will be difficult to achieve any meaningful achievement. So I want to ask, why standing before us, that if peradventure he ends up as Minister for National Planning, definitely he has to be constructively engaged with the Central Bank of Nigeria. How will he handle this particular aspect of our economic challenges that have been confronting us as a nation? Secondly, Mr. President, yesterday the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria spoke to us, and in his speech it carries a lot of promising future for us as a country. He mentioned in the area of agriculture what he's going to do. He also speak to the area of transportation and all other things that it tends to bring to the table, even though we are seeing it as palliative measure. But it has to do with national planning and budgets. I want him to speak to that president's speech in 2 minutes. What is his own view about that particular speech? I so submit. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, the distinguished nominee.
Distinguished senators, thank you so much for the questions, and I also want to thank you for speaking glowingly about my CV. Thank you very much. I will start from the question by our revered Senate President. Was CBN in competition with federal government? Of course, CBN can never be in competition with the federal government because Central Bank of Nigeria is an economic arm of federal government which handles or oversees the monetary policy functions of the federal government. The second arm is the Ministry of Finance, Budget, Planning, AGF, that oversees the fiscal policy arm. And technically, I don't really see anything wrong about the structure of the CBN, but the only issue which I will be open to this annual chamber is around the governance structure of supervising the CBN itself. I want to state that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. There are 3 highest decision-making bodies in Central Bank of Nigeria: the Committee of Governors, Monetary Policy Committee, and the Board of Directors. The CBN governor is the chairman of these 3 committees, which is good. There's nothing bad in this because all over the world, the independence of the CBN must be guaranteed. But the governor is just the first among equals. There are 5 governors in the Central Bank of Nigeria, a governor and 4 deputy governors. We must ensure that the appointment of the 4 deputy governors must be independent of the Central Bank governor, so that they are not subservient to the governor himself. Number 2 is the fact that the reporting line is the governor to the presidency. And for 5 years, the president may not see any of the deputy governors. There should be occasions, it could be once in a quarter, once in 6 months, that the entire committee of governors will meet with the Mr. President, and they are from their own perspective. There's what we call minority opinions. In all the minutes of the COG, of the MPC, and of the board of directors, they are always documented. Most of these controversial decisions coming out of the CBN were actually taken by either 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. There is always a minority opinion. So far, the 3 as the governor by their side, they have their way. The minority will have their say. Even they may have superior arguments. Once in a while, I believe the presidency should undertake to go through some of these minority opinions at the committee of governors meetings, at the board of directors meetings, or monetary policy committee meetings. A number of issues may actually come out of it. And lastly, sir, I would also suggest that the economic management team of the country, of the nation, which comprise of the finance minister, the budget and national planning, the CBN governor, the Attorney General of the Federation, and some other relevant ministries, must have some subtle oversight on CBN in terms of interrogating a lot of decisions of Central Bank of Nigeria. If CBN knows that there is a body is going to report to, in terms of the list of the companies and individuals they allocated foreign exchange to, how the MPC arrived at the interest rate, the benchmark rate, the volume of money created, in terms of the BDCs licensed, payment system, and a lot of other things, even development, finance, intervention, and lending, they will be very, very moderate, and they will be careful, because this is an abnormal situation in the country and must be handled unconventionally.
Before then, distinguished senators, somebody was providing solutions to some of our problems. And I noticed that some senators were distracted. The things he said here, he pointed out that there was no proper monitoring of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And that, in fact, there is no monitoring. And that in all the meetings of the various arms of the CBN, there were always minority opinions that may even turn out to be the opinion that would have salvaged the economy. He also pointed out that there was a big flaw, and that flaw is the fact that the president of the country only meets with the Central Bank governor alone. And there was never a time he demanded to see the other 4 deputy governors. He also, and therefore, whatever the Central Bank governor tells the president would look as if that is the decision of the CBN, when in reality, they have their own diverse opinions. And he also pointed out that there was no kind of organized or statutory meeting that involved the Accountant General of the Federation, the Governor of Central Bank, the Budget Planning Division, the CBN governors, and those 4 deputy governors, even once in a year, that in 5 years of being there, nothing like that. And therefore, what came out of CBN did not reflect the totality of their decisions, and so things went wrong. It is not as if CBN was in competition with government, but that nobody was supervising CBN. And therefore, whatever decisions they took there, they had nobody to report to. So I think this is a food for thought for distinguished senators. And that means that we must revisit the act that set up the CBN. Because most of the problems we are seeing cannot be answered by him. But he cannot stand here and condemn the very institution that he belonged. But he has at least hinted us that it is not every decision that he agreed with, or the other people, the other deputy governors agreed with. So we probably would not have been where we are now if, indeed, we had a proper oversight and monitoring of the CBN by the act itself. I think you should not expose more. We welcome you, and we'd like you to take a bow. We'll consider your case after this.